Okay, good morning, students. This is a bit unusual, however, we're going to make it work. The purpose of today is this is going to be a recording of 6.1.1, What Led Up to World War I. What you can do with this video is you can pause it throughout to take notes on the slides. You can fast forward it, you can slow it down, you can rewind, you can skip ahead. Whatever you need to do to take notes is entirely up to you. Now, the purpose of today is to ask the question, what led up to World War I? Well, we're going to figure this out. We're going to take a condensed version of history from the French Revolution all the way to pre-World War I, and then next time we meet on Monday, we are going to begin World War I with what led up to it as well. So, here's a guiding question for today. What contributed to 20th century global conflicts? How do we build a nation? First of all, you have to have a national culture, an integrated culture. That would be extremely local, have dislocated communities, and enlarged communities at the same time. This is very vital and important in Europe because Europe has so many different types of peoples, different countries, different ideas of nationhood. Now, the French Revolution, with liberty, equality, fraternity, helped establish those three ideologies that would later contribute to all sorts of things that happened pre-World War I and after World War I. Here's an image of a national culture with flags of countries being raised. You have statues. It looks glorious. If we recall, this looks romantic. If we remember the Romantic era, images like this have a sense of emotion, a sense of belonging, a sense of something, whatever you want to think in your head. This is a romantic image. A conscious culture you need. And you need to have a state versus a church for a national culture. So you need to have the government figure against the Catholic Church Pope. There are always butting heads within Europe. Who has the most power? Does the government have the power? Does religion have the power? Who knows, right? Well, that was a state versus church argument all throughout Europe. On the left-hand side, we have Otto von Bismarck, who was the founder of the German Empire as we know of it today. He integrated all the German people together, all the Prussians, all of everybody else, and we'll dive more into him. And then on the right-hand side, you have the Pope and of the Catholic Church, and then they are playing a game of chess. With chess, it's implied that, hey, if I do this move, I'm thinking 10 steps ahead of what my opponent can do. So in Europe, it's a battle versus state versus church. The government versus religion. You also have universities start to pop up and public school systems start to pop up as a form of national culture. Everyone is going to learn the same thing, the national culture thing. Everyone's going to have the same languages, the same style of clothing. Everything is national. Everything is integrated. The press. Spreading the news, the English model. Way back before there were any cell phones. You got your entertainment from reading. Amazing, right? In newspapers, you'd have these stories. You'd have stories in newspapers that you could read and get your entertainment from. It was very great stories that you could read. Additionally, with a national service, you had from post offices to postings. You had a national way to receive your mail. So for example, here in America, we have the post office. So if you give a letter in the post office, it's going to reach its destination. It's a national service that we all pay taxes into. And in uniform. If you highlight uni means one. In uniform. So for example, the Ottoman Empire uniform fashion looks something like this. You can find this in Le Petit Journal, Supplement Illustré. So you can see a national style of dress, a national style of uniform was starting to emerge as a national culture. And then additionally, we have Manifest Destiny in the United States, or American Progress, where we started to, in North America, start going westward. It was our destiny to go westward, to reach from sea to shining sea. So let's step back from the United States. Let's go back into Europe. We have Italy. Italy was very disunited, had lots of papal states, lots of different kingdoms in the peninsula of Italy. And then the unification of Italy from 1859 to 1870 occurred. If we recall, the prince, Niccolo Machiavelli, wrote The Prince in order to help a princely kingdom with the different powers. And one of his key takeaways was that princes or rulers should be feared rather than loved, if we recall Machiavelli's The Prince. So with Italy, lots of different kingdoms, lots of different colors from 1859 to 1870. And you can see that it was more of a united culture that it was starting to emerge as. If we recall from the previous, there were lots of different kingdoms. Now, there's more kingdoms that are united together, as you can see, that are color-coded. Now we're going to jump to Germany, the unification of Germany. Before Germany existed as we know it today, it was lots of different tribes, lots of different kingdoms, lots of different territories. The Prussians were the precursor to the Germans. Who are the Prussians? The Prussians were the Prussians before they became Germans, before they were known as Germans. So, you can see a map of Germany as it existed from 1815 to 1871. Lots of disunited peoples that eventually emerged to become one. Let's take a step back. Look at 200 years of history. 1560 to 1871. So, these 300 years of history, a lot of stuff happened. Most notably, the Holy Roman Empire, on the left-hand side of the map, existed in 1560 and 1871. The Holy Roman Empire is not there. However, you can see it's more of the German Empire. The German Empire took the Holy Roman Empire place in its location, where everything else is essentially still around the same thing. We have France in 1560 in the same relative position in 1871. We have England, we have Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Poland. Lots of similarities except for the Holy Roman Empire. The defeat of the Pope. So, with that state versus church, the ruler versus the Pope, the clashing of heads, the clashing of battles within Europe, the Pope started to be defeated. We had Italy. We had different papal states that were created. The French Republic. During the French Revolution, they really opposed religion. And one of the examples that was much later on, in the newly established French Republic that Napoleon Bonaparte created, there was a firing squad of church leaders, popes, anyone who was remotely religious and had some power, were shot in a firing squad. You could see people, there's a group of men with guns about to shoot 6 individuals. That is what a firing squad is called. And this happened in France. And then the German Empire. The German Empire was defeating the Pope as well. If we recall from the previous image of Otto von Bismarck versus the Pope playing that chess game, the German Empire eventually won out. Let's talk about Alexander II. Who is Alexander II? Alexander II was the Tsar of Russia, of the Russian Empire. A Tsar is another way of saying a ruler. He is important. We're going to go back to Russia momentarily. But first, we need to talk about Darwin, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin and Orthodox faith. Essentially, there was a big battle between evolution and what the Bible said. The Bible said that Adam and Eve were the first people on Earth. Darwin says that we evolved from chimpanzees. Which one is it? Who knows, right? Well, Charles Darwin thought we came from evolution, and then religious leaders thought that we came from Adam and Eve, from the first people. So this led to a thing called natural selection, survival of the species, Darwinism. Survival of the species is a key point because it then led to the mindset of, hey, everybody in Europe, we need to fight for our literal survival. We need to invade other places. We need to kill everybody to have our blood to make us survive. Natural selection. If we can survive, we can reproduce, repopulate the earth in our image. And this led to some dicey stuff, as we're going to see very, very soon. So now let's talk about ideologies. An idea, an ideology. Anything that has an ism is an ideology. So for example, we looked at romanticism. We looked at Marxism. We looked at nationalism. Nationalism. Anything that has an ism is an ideology. It is a system of beliefs. It is a doctrine. It is a doctrine of a way of thinking. The rise of the popular press led into the ideologies moving very quickly. The press is one of the most important things created in history because you can write something down, you can print it, you can mass produce it to everybody to read. And that led to lots of different thinking, lots of different ideologies to start emerging. So, here's an example. The New York Herald. This is a newspaper. It was on the printing press. This was printed up and then distributed through the printing press to everyone in a very quickly. Do it, and then lots of people could get information. New York Journal, for another example. Title: Destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy. Whoa, right? If you read that headline, everybody knows it in February. New York Thursday, February 17th. And then we see lots of people that are able to figure this out. And then everybody's thinking about it, everybody's talking about it, and then boom! Just like that, everybody knows it. The rise of the printing press led to mass news. This was before social media. Social media, you use Twitter, you use Facebook, Instagram, whatever you use. Then just like that, everybody can see what you wrote. Printing press was similar in nature, where you write something out, you mass produce it, and everybody locally can see what's going on. The rise of mass education also led into the ideas into ideology, and additionally mass narratives for judgments. What's going on? What should you care about? What should you do about it? The key words: care about, keyword, do about it. Your judgment call. What should you do? What's going on? What should you care about? What should you do about it? When you read about it, you can form your own opinion because of that. And there are lots of enemies. Let's talk about some of the enemies, shall we? Sectarian liberalism. What is a liberal? A liberal, for business, the national state, and corporations, was against priestcraft or religion and protectionism, or having tariffs that protect your stuff and no one else can get into your market share. That is a sectarian liberal. On the flip side of liberalism, we have socialist or social democrat. They were free-thinking, anti-clerical, so anti-religious. They were for a group, not the individual. They were more of the materialism, and Marxism. If we recall, Karl Marx, Marxism, created communism. Renewing tradition, redefining conservatism. So, we had the liberals on one side, then on the other side, we have conservatives. Essentially, conservatism was the monarchs and nobles. They were for the state, they were for the church, the army, the empire. Since the liberals were anti-religious, the conservative was pro-religion. And one of those was Tsar Alexander III. He eventually died, and then his son, Nicholas II, was coronated as the Russian Tsar for the Russian Empire. Now, Nicholas II is going to have very unfortunate events happen to him, as we are going to see during World War I. So, the Russian Empire was more of the conservative. They were for the army, they were for religion, they were for the state, they were for the empire. And they were against mere materialism. They were against mere materialism. In other words, they were against everything that we create materialistic. They were against everything that comes from materials. They're pro-religion. Whatever is in the afterlife, that is what they care about. Why should we care about what's here? The next part of life is going to be amazing. And then, the Catholic counterattack occurred under conservatism. So the Catholic Church started to re-emerge itself to be in predominance. And then who is the nation? Who is the nation? Who are the people? Well, that was being renewed. We're going to look back at Darwinism and look back at New Nationalism. In the 1880s, Friedrich Nietzsche had a will to power, and Thomas Carlyle was a rule by the hero, the man of action who must not hesitate to use force. So there was some kind of will to power. There was some kind of force that you needed to create in New Nationalism. You needed to create by force, if you needed to, your country for survival. Darwinism, natural selection, survival of the fittest. And then nationalism. Same thing except with your nation. The German Empire must survive. The French Empire must survive. The Russian Empire must survive. All of these empires were thinking this. And these led up to lots of events in the 1800s that eventually spilled over into 1914 when World War I occurred. In political economy, liberalism was the free trade, and who had rejection of free trade? Germany and the USA. They wanted to keep their stuff within them. They did not want to go out and give their stuff away. They were more isolationist. Isolationist is you're closed off from the world. You're closed off from the world. You don't want any outside influence. So rejection of free trade. Examples of Germany, the US. Now, fertile soil. Fertile soil is a very key distinction. Write this down in your notes. Fertile soil. The events of 1859 to 1878, especially the German Empire. Blood and iron. In other words, blood meaning the people. Blood meaning the people of the nation. And then iron, the weapons, the swords, the cannons, the technology created as iron. Otto von Bismarck was the creator of the modern day Germany that we know of today. He had everyone from Prussia, all the other German tribes, come together into the unification of the borders of the German Empire, the German nation state. nationalism becomes a mass ideology. Lots of different parties, lots of different collections of people started to emerge within this. So, for example, some stuff: the Primrose League, League of Patriots, Colonial Society, Pan-German League, Navy League, National Liberals, Liberal Unionists. A mass ideology. Lots of different ideas, lots of different ideologies emerge as a result of nationalism. Unification of your state. And on the other hand, there was a thing called racialism. It was an ideology and the influence of immature science. Scientific racism. Scientific racism pointed that the Greek skull, the Negro skull, the chimpanzee skull were all different. They had a different shape. They believed, the science believed at the time, that there was a hierarchy with their skull shapes. You have a Greek skull at the top. It's what they considered the best genetics, the best skull. And then at the very bottom, you have the chimpanzee skull. And with the ideas of Charles Darwin with natural selection, with survival of the fittest, if the Greek skull was the top, the chimpanzee skull was the bottom, and in the middle you had the Negro skull. The scientific racism at the time stated that the Negro skull was more in line with what the chimpanzee skull looked like, which meant that they were not as evolved compared to the Greek skull. This was a scientific racism that they had a hierarchy of different types of people emerging. And then we had different movements. The Pan movements, the Pan-Slavic movements. So Slav is Eastern Europe. It's the Russians. And then the Pan-Asian movements. The continent of Asia. So you have modern-day China, Japan, India, Mongols. Everyone in Asia, they had a Pan-Asian movement as well. So with fertile soil, nationalism, and Charles Darwin's influence of natural selection, survival of the fittest, this all led to fertile soil, which essentially meant this is my land, this is my nation, everybody here is part of us. They are unified. And in the U.S. case, reunion and re-enslavement of the enslaved people during the Civil War. So, that is all going to march towards war. Who's excited for World War I? I know I am. So, this is a map of what it looked like prior to the events of World War I. Lots of funny movements occur before World War I. For example, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie was so ironic, so comical. There's going to be a meme about it on Monday. Stay tuned for that. However, if you look at this map, you had major players. The UK, France, Spain, Portugal, German Empire, Romania, Bulgaria, Ottoman Empire, Greece. This is all going to come to a head in World War I. So, that concludes this lecture, this lesson. If you want to rewind, if you want to skip parts, if you want to take notes, if you want to pause, you can. Let me demonstrate now what the next part of your assignment is going to be. If you click on 6.1.1, notes. Today was reviewing the PowerPoint of the events that occurred after the French Revolution. The context is necessary for understanding World War I and other 20th century conflicts. 20th century, 1990 to 1999. That is what 20th century means. So, I'll see you all Monday. We are going to review this slide. We're going to review this slide on Monday for everyone, if no one or if some people watch this video. And until next time, have a great snow day.